So welcome to Sharma Strength and Performance Podcast. Myself is Sharma. I work as an educator at an institution called FIPC, and I have worked with an institution called IIFEM, which was a government affiliated institution for training the trainers. So basically, my job is to train the fitness professionals, the aspiring fitness professionals of India. And I also compete in strongman, powerlifting. I have a little bit of amateur background in combat sports. So that's about it for myself. I train people and my whole life revolves around that. I'll be introducing my guest, the Daniel Saber, the Swedish powerlifting demigod. So Dan, please introduce yourself, man.
Hey man, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate getting to know you and your audience. So here's a bit of myself. Demigod, dude, I'm aiming to be a god, but as we all know, we've got to know where we're at. So my life essentially revolves a lot around training as well, besides the whole family and normal stuff things. When it comes to the actual training part, what I do is I compete in powerlifting, been competing for like 8 years. Began as a shitty lifter, but had a drive to become better. Eventually that evolved into me helping others, growing stronger, fixing their backs, and essentially to sum it all up, what I used to struggle with has become something I help people with, and that's the path I'm on.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's absolutely beautiful. So let me tell the listeners that you are not a lower tier powerlifter like myself. You are one of the topmost athletes that can be there. So tell them about your Wilks, man, and also your best total.
Sure. So best total was in November 2018, right before I cracked my tailbone and became a dad. And now this lockdown has happened, preventing me from crushing that previous total, which is set at 790 kilos. That was divided into, I believe, 287.5 kilo squat, a 177.5 kilogram bench, and a 325 kilogram deadlift. That's my best total in a meet that I can come up with right now. As for what the future holds, we'll see once everything gets going again.
And it was an IPF meet.
Yeah, that was an IPF meet. Wasn't a big meet. I was working my way up to World Championship level again, which I did. I won back in 2015 Worlds. And the spotters messed up my back in 2016 when I was re-racking the bar. They took it extremely unevenly, causing 2 disc herniations, causing a 2-year rehabilitation journey.
Was
Yeah,
it one single event or was it a repetitive injury? Or like the spotters doing it again and again in multiple sessions? Or did that happen during one heavy session?
that happened on my second squat at Worlds, like in the actual meet itself. So that messed up the rest of that competition and the following years after that. So that's
Yeah.
probably been one of the hardest things to do, recover from an injury that caused me to barely be able to walk.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of will mentally to overcome such injuries and again build up to the world championship levels because the top tier athletes, it takes a different kind of mindset to compete on that level, whether it's any sport.
Definitely.
Mhm. So how has your the road of recovery been till now
All
from the
right. So
tailbone crack?
the tailbone crack was really just let it heal up. That
Mhm.
wasn't anything major. Like the back I just described, that took like 3 months and then it healed up by itself last year in like March. Then in April I became a dad, and for all you parents out there, you know what that means. For those of you that aren't parents yet, it means that your recovery is next to none. It's more like on the negative.
The reason I
So,
do not want to get married anytime soon.
yeah, unexpected things happen, man. Unexpected
Yeah.
things happen.
It's beautiful to have a family though. A family of your own.
Yeah. So now that's all settled. Training now. More on that later. You'll have to wait to
Mhm.
get to the good part.
So, what was your weight class when you had the 700 and what total?
90.
790
I
kilograms
was,
total.
yeah, I was in the minus 120 kilo class. I weighed in at like 106 kilograms. I didn't
Mhm.
like to cut down. So competed at that class. I'm like 115 now. Still got abs though, so
Bam.
I'm locked in.
Yeah. So the guy who with whom I was training with my training partner, apparently he did all the programming for me lately, since the last year and the last to last year. So that is when I got a little bit serious about powerlifting and strongman. Not about the strongman because I'm just too short, but for the powerlifting. So what the advice he gave me was do not restrict yourself to a weight class because I came from a very strict weight class based sport. If you compete in any of the combat sports, all of those are like very, very strict when it comes to making weight, and the mindset that requires the weight cut is entirely a different mindset than letting it go and just get as strong as possible you can be. So, and that is the kind of mindset which is required in powerlifting, which is entirely a different thing when it comes to the weight management of an athlete than the combat sports. So, what I got is, so I do you guess what my height is? You've seen my videos, you've analyzed my deadlift, right? So guess what my height
Yeah,
is?
let me see. 175, 1
Oh,
meter 75 centimeters.
like what would that be in feet?
In feet, I don't know, probably around 5'8".
No, man, I'm really short. I'm somewhere on 5 foot 2 inches or 3 inches on a tall day.
Oh, really? Shit.
Yeah, man. I've got tiny hands,
Damn,
man. So that that's
damn.
why I can't even hook grip.
Oh, shit. Well,
I'm
that's
really
an
tiny.
advantage in powerlifting. That's close to Ed Cowan's length, so you're all set. You're all set, dude.
I just have to get strong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So that is the thing, man. And then I bulked up to 74 kilograms. And since then, what I've been doing is maintaining. Like I have not been able to, I did not want to cut weight, but what I've been trying to do is just put on more and more quality muscle mass, which can be translated into my later lifting career, which can be relatively safer for myself. Because also, does the lower back pain or overall back pain has to do a lot about the weight management of an athlete, the body weight management of an athlete, because the higher mass you have, the better chances of what do you call it, reacting against a force of the barbell is there. So the more mass you have, theoretically, the safer you are under the barbell. Is that
Definitely,
so?
definitely. So there's a lot of factors going into it. Just pretend you're going to make a really tasty pizza. All of the
Hmm.
ingredients have to be put together well in a certain order in order for you to get a
Hmm.
pizza that's delicious. When it
Yep.
comes to bulkier lifters, especially those with a larger belly, that's the population group with the least amount of back pain and or injuries. So definitely an advantage to it if you want to skip your six-pack abs.
So the skinnier you are, the higher risk of getting hurt under the barbell you have, at least in
Definitely.
terms of the spinal cord injuries.
Yeah, so once you start getting down below 10% body fat, lifting heavy, the risk of injury is definitely increased. So that's why, as we're talking about where to place your focus while you're powerlifting, looking at weight,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's no major reason to really stay in a weight class unless it's like for a record. Freaking, I began in the 83 kilo weight class and I'm more shredded now with more than 30 kilograms more
Just saw your
mass
recent
on
pics,
me.
man. When you were
Yeah,
doing the shirtless benching, that
yeah,
was about 200 kilo gym bench PR.
yeah, that's a new
Which
PR.
still
Finally
counts.
broke that.
I don't know why people have this tendency of holding on to the meat PRs too much. I mean, it does count in the meat, but in the end of the day, we are lifters. Lifter is a lifter, right? So a gym PR also counts, and your 200 kilo bench was pretty decent, man. It was with a pause.
Yeah, like it's easier to do in competitions. Like
Yeah,
all my best lifts, like prior to this quarantine, were in meets, cause that's where the correct mindset comes in that allows you to win and exceed your limits while you're competing. So definitely something that can be developed and definitely something we can talk about if you're
mhm.
interested about that.
We will be definitely talking about that in coming podcasts. But in this one, I just want the audience to know you more. I want audience to know what you're all about, and then we're gonna go towards a little bit about of lockdown-based advice for the Indian powerlifting enthusiasts or the competitors.
Sure.
So Dan, uh, what else would you recommend to someone who is going through an injury? uh, More specifically, uh, lower back or overall back injury, herniated discs, and they want to come back to powerlifting. They were already competing because a lot of Indian lifters who are listening to it are most probably suffering from this problem. The
Sure.
problem with Indian lifters mostly is that they do not have a plan. Even before starting the podcast, we were discussing this, that the Indian lifters, we're very good lifters in general, overall with the heart. The Indian lifters do definitely have heart. That's what I've observed. The people around me, they're brave enough to get into a barbell, but uh, if you don't have the appropriate mass or the technique or the appropriate preparation for that, the only mindset is not going to take you anywhere. Or not even mindset, just bravery is not going to take you anywhere. So
Yeah.
that is why most of the Indian lifters have very short career time span. And we look at a very myopic picture in terms of I want to be only the juniors champion, or I want to be under what do you call it, 19 champion or something like that. And then their whole journey stops. In my term, the strength sports, the peak of a lifter comes in the earlier age, somewhere around later 20s to early 30s. And certain lifters, we've even observed later 30s, at least in strongman, a lot of lifters, right? So,
Definitely.
yeah.
So
So
when it
please
comes
talk a
to,
little bit on that.
sure. So first step, especially if you're already injured, is to acknowledge the fact that you're injured, that you've got an issue that needs to be resolved. Because if you're a lifter, chances are you'll struggle with accepting that you're in a state which doesn't allow you to do what you think you're able to do. So before you get into, let's say, any exercises or any of that, it's important to realize that you need to acknowledge where you're at, which means understand that you need to do something different. Otherwise, you're just going to spiral down, down, down. Once you've acknowledged the fact of the requirement of a change, now you can look at what to do. And that's the tricky part, to be honest, because there's so much out there about back pain. That's one of the reasons it took me so goddamn long, because there's all this advice that you don't know if it's good, you don't know if it's bad, could be good for somebody, not for you. So what do? You need to gain an understanding of what's going on. And there are two ways primarily you can do this that works the best. The third way, which I'm going to discuss instantly, is not the way to go, which is to ask your friends if they've dealt with a back injury before. It could help, but in general, don't go around Googling and just looking for advice from anybody.
Because mostly
If
Google's
you,
gonna tell you that you have cancer about anything. Like
yeah,
even if you have headache, you have cancer. If you have diarrhea, you have cancer. If you have
yeah,
back pain, you have bone cancer.
yeah, or in times like this, it's the corona, bruh. So,
Yeah, it's the corona, bro.
what do you do? Here's what you
What
do.
do you right?
One, find the appropriate source to get help from. You can do this on your own, or you can do this from a professional that's actually helped people, not a doctor giving you painkillers telling you to stop lift, because that's not a
Mhm.
solution. That's running from a solution. So where do you go? The guy that helped me the most, that I ended up taking his course, ended up becoming certified, is this guy named Dr. Stuart McGill. He's got a great book called The Back Mechanic that, coupled with you acknowledging that something needs to be done differently, you'll have a great chance of recovering. That's like your first option if you're low on funds. If you've got some cash, or if lifting is important enough for you to want to spend a lot of cash on it if necessary, then look up an appropriate professional. And there's tons of those. I don't know if there's any in India. Like, I do back stuff online, but for most people, especially if you're not at an advanced level, getting his book is definitely a good place to start.
Mm.
Yeah,
I just got his book some time back. It's worth a read, man. Definitely, really helped
yeah,
me a lot. Even though I
yeah.
have not been suffering from a back injury right now, and when I was really young in my school days, when I was just finishing my schooling, um, yeah, around that time only. So we have the final board exams in India. The Indian listeners will get it. So those exams, they are like one of the most important exams for your career after the schooling. So children, even the athletes who are really competitive, they tend to lag on their athleticism during that time. So I did not train much, and later on, before that, I was doing a lot of jujitsu. I was doing a lot of judo, both of them. A ton of grappling I was doing. So that was already putting a lot of wear and tear on my back. And you get how the grappling is, man. The grappling is not forgiving in terms of back pain. You're always in an awkward position. You do not get time to brace. You do not get time to get ready. And most of the athletes in the collegiate or school level in India, and even in most of the Western countries till now, have not been encouraged to lift weights that much as they should be for injury prevention purpose, to build up an armor around them, so that when they compete or they train the martial art, which requires them to bend their back in awkward positions and to be slammed in awkward positions, can save them to some extent. So what I went through was a bad sciatica pain, and also the problem through my this, what do you call it, the cervical spine. So the cervical spine, there was nerve which was getting pinched, and then even till now, if I would spar, if I would wear gloves and I would get 2-3 shots under my chin, my hands start getting numb even to this day. And I've not been competing in striking since years now. So there are certain things which cause problems and they stay with you. But reading that book was really enlightening. At least it did start a path for me, so that I could talk to people who are a bit more intelligent and who have more application-based understanding, not only book level understanding. So, like yourself. So, have you been helping Indian dudes out with this, with the
With
lower back
back
pain?
pain.
Mm-hmm.
I had one
I
guy
know
I
one
was
friend of mine
coaching.
you did.
Yeah, so two guys, a couple guys, actually.
Mhm.
I've helped out. Uh, one with knee pain as well, but yeah, I've helped out a couple like digitally. Fortunately, their problems weren't huge, and when I say huge, I mean pain 24/7. Literally, whatever you do, you're in pain. That's
That's
some serious pain.
that's some
But
serious pain. Even to think about that, because people have no idea. Most of the non-lifters don't know what we are talking about.
yeah, so definitely like definitely applied a lot. I'm not the guy that studies more than I practice my stuff. I
Mhm.
prefer to implement while I'm learning and just focus on results. So if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So
Find something
with,
else.
yeah, with practical application, you learn much faster. Like if
Right.
you're studying while applying the stuff you're learning at the same time, your rate of knowledge and experience stacks up and increases exponentially instead of just sitting and reading a book.
Uh-huh.
So that's one of the reasons why I enjoy helping people because I learn a lot from it too.
Definitely, definitely. Even I've learned a lot during my courses. When I train trainers, I learn. When I train my clients, I learn. And mostly I've worked with the general population only. Very few athletes are there with whom I've worked. And my passion is mostly there within athletes only. But the problem is athletes cannot pay that much. And still, I understand everyone has bills to pay. And I do train athletes on cheaper rates and sometimes free too, but still the total number of athletes compared to the total number of general population is always going to be higher in my case. And in terms of most of the fitness professionals from India, even the strength and conditioning coaches, man, like very few, very few who are hired by an organization, who are being hired to train a team, a sports team, are going to be training them. Otherwise, most of the fitness professionals have background and more experience with general population only. And general population also do suffer a lot of pain in the back, but it's not because of lifting mostly. It's because of their sedentary lifestyle or overall poor choices, I guess.
Gotcha, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
so whether anybody's like, say, powerlifter or general population, there's one thing everybody has in common, if you can understand this, and that's probably that you're human. And since you're
right.
human, you've got a human body,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
the same principle applies. Like, what's going
Right,
on? What do you need help with? And for me
right.
personally, um, I work with some athletes. I work with general population as well. It doesn't matter to me because if somebody wants to get better, that's
Hmm.
all that matters to
Right.
me. Like, I don't care if you're a professional powerlifter or not. I've worked with some elite lifters, and as long as you want to get better, that's all that matters.
Right. Okay, Dan, let's go on to the second part, which is going to be, well, you just tell me what are the situation in Sweden in terms of the lockdown.
All right, so Sweden's got a pretty controversial approach to this based on everybody I've spoken with.
Hmm.
I've got a lot of friends everywhere around in the world, and
Right.
we've got the least restricted approach. There's barely any like regulations. There are some recommendations, but the major difference would be that there are no buffets, which sucks, and people are behaving pretty normally, to be honest. Like there's a
Right.
lot of people out in the streets. You can barely tell a difference. Like you could the first week, and now everybody's sick and tired of that. So a lot of it is the same as normal. The government isn't enforcing any strict laws, so people are just basically doing what they're mostly doing. higher unemployment rate, which is to be understood, but I think Sweden is one of the countries where the corona has had the least impact. Like, a lot of stuff is still open. I can just go downstairs from my office and shop some candy at the store. It's open like normally. They've got some recommendations to keep your distance, but that's pretty much it.
And how many people are getting sick there?
Um, to be honest, I stopped watching the news like a month ago, but I think there's been maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people dead
Mm-hmm.
from the corona.
Mm-hmm.
Like, stopped watching the news probably over a month ago because
Yeah.
I wasn't being benefited
Even I
from
don't do the
reading
doom
about that.
scrolling anymore, man.
Say what?
The internet term for that is doom scrolling.
Oh.
You scroll about doom.
Yeah, you've got to focus on yourself, like
Yeah.
no matter what's going on, and here's a good one, no matter if you're a lifter or not, no matter what's going on in the world, there's always going to be something going on, like there's always a certain degree of chaos, sometimes more pronounced, sometimes less pronounced, but even with everything going on, and this is my personal take on it, you can disagree with me if you wanna, you still have opportunity to improve. Like,
Right.
there's always going to be something you can do, and if you focus on that, you won't get distracted and carried away with the chaos. Rather, you'll be in control in the midst of the chaos. You'll be like the eye, like the middle, like the center of a storm. Okay?
You know what I did after our last conversation? The last time when we did talk, um, I understood you projecting the exactly same idea to me. And what I did was I decided that I want to excel at my craft. So I decided to take my podcasting seriously because I have been really lagging on it. I just took it for fun. I was not serious with this. So I decided that I will be recording at least 2 podcasts a week. Also, what I decided was I'm going to take my training seriously a bit more and I'm going to make changes. And the third thing which I did was about making money. So I had already put a lot of funds into my course. So there was a course that I did sign up for that I was studying under some other world-class coach. And I decided that I'm going to finish the damn course in the quarantine time period only. So I started my studies. So yeah, man, this has been
That's
pretty good
awesome.
to me. What the things you've been telling are actually certain, very resourceful, insightful, and practical stuff that everyone can apply in their life. Whether you're a lifter or not, doesn't matter. If you're listening to this podcast, you can use these.
Definitely, like, you need to understand who you are, because if you don't, it doesn't matter what you're doing. And this applies to you whether you're a lifter or not, because I'm going to give you 3 examples now. First off, let's say everything closed down. You're now in a position where you're doing nothing. You're like a robot. You're a zombie. Then you have the second type, like I'm just giving you some examples, where, all right, everything locked down, and now you're just doing a little bit less and
Mhm.
trying to get by. And then you have the third type where, all right, chaos broke out and you suddenly for some reason went all in into what you should have been doing before the quarantine. Is
Mhm.
there any type that's better than the other? I don't know, but here's what you need to know. Can you do something better? Like, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you're looking to get stronger or improve yourself in some way. So pick something. Doesn't mean you have to be super productive and freaking work your ass off all the time. I play some video games occasionally, read some chill books, but get the work done, because otherwise it's not so fun playing games. So make sure that you begin with something and take it from there. Like if you're a power lifter and your gym shut down, ah, well, you can't train in the gym, but can you get stronger? Yeah, you can, if you want to get stronger. Does this mean doing tons of push-ups? Nah, I'll tell you what it means later on.
Yeah. Let's go and talk about that only, man, because I would like them to hear about the beautiful, beautiful stuff you told me about, that how to train during the lockdown situation when you do not have the powerlifting implement at home. So for myself, I'm a bit more fortunate than others because I have an uncle who was also competing in powerlifting in his younger years, and he had a little bit of very old, centuries old equipment at home. So if you've seen any of my training videos, I have some old broken down stuff that I still use for my training. I have one barbell, about 100 kilos of weight, 102, 4 kilos of weight that can be kept over it. It bends if I put more than 96 or 94 kilograms on it. So benching has been going shit because of that. Also the what do you call it? The bench has a really unstable, and it has a very little bit of surface area on it. So I cannot even keep my back over it completely. Um, so that is where the problems occur. But I'm still way, 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 way more fortunate than most because I can still work on other skills. I can still learn how to clean. I'm still getting stronger. I have been recently getting way more jacked than I was before. In just terms of my body composition, honestly, I've been getting better than before. So I'm pretty happy about that. So yeah, you can do fuck ton of work. I've been getting stronger at overhead pressing because I absolutely suck at strongman. Even at the lightest class strongman, I suck because I'm just too small. Like I have a tiny bone structure. But does that mean that gives me an excuse just to sit at home and bitch about it and not train? No, that is not an excuse. You better train because otherwise just stop competing, right? So that is there, man. I've been fortunate in those terms. There are people who do not have any equipment, and most of the lifters, the power lifters, specifically Indian powerlifters I know with whom I have trained and competed with, a lot of them who are not fortunate are facing the problem of the total crash because they were all of the training when they were competing and they had access to everything was powerlifting based, standard powerlifting gear, power bar, stiff bar, calibrated plates, power racks, benches that are really good, that are meant for benching, all of that shit. Now, and even deadlift platforms that were made of ply. Sorry. So when they had all of that luxury around them, and yes, it is luxury. So when they had all of that luxury around them, they never cared about it. Now, when everything gets shut down, they do not have any alternative way. And yeah, the only thing they can think of right now, because they never trained with the plan, as we talked about in the start of the podcast, most of the Indian powerlifters do not have a plan. All they do is almost every session is almost a max effort, and they do have some system. There's some idea of a system that they are following, but mostly they are not following any system. So sometimes bastardized version of some sort of conjugate training, which is not exactly west side, but some sort of conjugate. But mostly it's a lot of max effort days and a little bit of back off sets, and that's about it, man. So that is why most of the times my fellow lifters do have a very little time span of competing. They do have a lot of back injury history. And the worst part, in such situations, such chaotic situations, the kind of situation we are facing right now, they completely crash down. And I feel very bad for them. So I wanted to give them some advice, the competitive power lifters, that they do not completely crash down.
Definitely. So, based on what you're telling me, it's important to understand like why you train and what's fun to do. Like as a powerlifter, freaking I'm a powerlifter myself. We enjoy lifting heavy shit. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of doing freaking 100 push-ups, but what do you do? So Here's what you do. You begin with what not to do. And what not to do is to die. And here's what I mean
Okay.
by that. You need to understand that chances are you'll keep living for many more years, decades to come. And chances are there's going to be more shit happening after this shit is over. So understand that the world is not going to end. Like, if you're not feeling 100% right now, that's fine. Like, you don't have to feel like you're on top of the world. Take it with a couple grains of salt, this crisis, because the only thing we're forced to do is sit at home. 100 years ago, we were forced to go out and battle enemies and die in
Hmm.
huge quantities. So how do you train for powerlifting? Like, if we just give you a couple easy examples you can do where you're still training max effort. Here's one thing. Super simple, super great, doesn't require really anything. Isometrics. So what an isometric is a 100% contraction against an immovable object. If you don't have a gym, you probably have a house, something you live in. Just get creative. How can you do isometric training? I can show you two simple things right now for your shoulders and triceps and pecs. Here's an isometric contraction for your pecs. Try to push your hands together as hard as possible with all the force you've got. You might need some warming up and just go as hard as you can.
Oh man, my
Hold
boobs
it
are
for,
busting.
yeah, hold it for 6 seconds. Do 3 to 4 sets. Give it everything you've got. Done.
Hmm.
That's a maximum effort. Isometric contraction. There was this story about this guy locked up in jail, and the way he trained isometrics was he would try to bend the bars keeping him
I
imprisoned.
think I've read about it. Yeah.
Yeah, eventually he broke up, and he was crazy strong.
Hmm.
Isometric overhead press. Hold yourself in a certain position, let's say around the area of your sticking point. Elevate yourself on some freaking books or bookshelves, whatever, and push against the wall or the ceiling or the rooftop, whatever. That's one thing. What else can you do? Let's say you want to do some deadlifts. All right. Well, what can you do? Get creative. Are you living alone or are you living with people? Try having somebody push you down, or if you've got, let's say, a wall you can lie on, two narrow walls, you can press against it and do a deadlift laying down, more like a leg press, to be honest.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
All right, tons of things you
So we're
can do.
gonna
You
teach you
just,
a lot of leg drive. At least
yeah,
max effort leg drive idea. That's going to teach you.
yeah. That way you're still doing the heavy shit, so to speak.
Right.
But the heavy shit is not everything there is to powerlifting, because let me give you an example. I pulled a very easy 320 kilogram deadlift last week, and this
Yeah,
was the
that's pretty good.
first, yeah, this was the first deadlift I've pulled over 300 kilograms in almost 6 months.
Okay.
You don't always need to go heavy to get stronger. It's like, pretend you're eating a pizza and the meat is the actual eating of the pizza, but you've got a lot of preparation in order to get to the point where you're supposed to be eating the pizza. If you're just maxing out at the gym all the time, it's like eating all the ingredients raw. You'll feel sick and you won't get any stronger
Hmm.
from it.
Beautiful analogy, man. That's
Yeah,
it.
so
No one
isolate
wants to
every
eat
ingredient.
capsicum. No one
Say
wants to
what?
eat the capsicum. No one wants to eat capsicum raw.
Yeah, like, all right, sure, tomato sauce might work, but good luck eating the bread.
Yeah, good luck eating the bread.
Yeah, so think of your powerlifting training as a pizza with different components. Let's say the bread is your foundation. The foundation means your ability to train. Your ability to train is dictated by your ability to get to the gym and do stuff consistently. Work on that. All right, what else? The oven, making sure you're not burning yourself up. This is the equivalent of not going too hot in the oven and burning the pizza up and leaving it raw in the middle. what can this translate into? Making sure you're building a solid recovery routine, making sure that you're training on going to bed at the right time, waking up at the right time, stuff like that, so that once this lockdown is over, your routines that will help you in the gym are even more reinforced, plus you've gotten stronger. Does that mean that you'll instantly set PR in the gym? Could be, especially if you're weak as shit, because chances are you're not that strong. And if you're not that strong, you can use your
Getting
body.
stronger becomes easier.
Yeah, you can use your body weight for a lot of work. Here's what I mean. Let's take a push-up as an example. A push-up is roughly 70 to 80% of your body weight on your arms. If you're weighing 100 kilograms, that means one rep of push-up is like doing a single on, say, 75 kilograms of bench.
Hmm.
If your bench PR is 100 kilograms and you do 6 sets of 6 with 2-minute rest, paused push-ups, that's like doing 6 sets of 6 paused bench at 70 kilograms. It's very similar.
Hmm.
You mentioned the Indian powerlifters not planning. Here's a good rule of thumb. If you're not planning to win, you're planning to fail. So learn that by Charles Poliquin, great coach, and keep that in mind. Like, if we don't have the best thing accessible, what's the next best thing we can do? That's one thing I learned from Josh Bryant, which is my coach. Because even if I'm a powerlifting coach, it's always easier for somebody else to see what you actually need.
Yeah.
So
I've been
those are
using
some.
Josh methods within my training lately. Density training methods. And recently I was fortunate enough to attend his seminar in Delhi, man.
Ah,
Which
really?
was
Cool.
yeah, man, that was an enlightening experience. That was meeting one of the real OGs of powerlifting and overall strength and conditioning. Like that was an amazing experience. And when that guy spoke, sounded like Buddha is speaking. Lord Buddha speaking. I'm telling you, Lord Buddha, but a bit more white and strong.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So if you want to get stronger, there's a lot of areas you can improve. When I messed up my back, I couldn't lift heavy, but I wanted to
Mhm.
get stronger again. I started working on things outside just lifting heavy. One of those things were actually making sure I got up in time, fell asleep in time, and that's stuck ever since. Like, made
Oh.
sure to get up around a certain time, fall asleep around a certain time, which now has improved my recovery. Are you guys allowed to go outside your house, or are you forced to stay inside?
Technically not. So most of the part we are forced to stay inside. Few people do go outside. It varies from place to place. The rules of lockdowns are relatively more strict in certain areas and a little bit more liberal in certain areas. And in certain areas, they might not be that liberal, but people are a bit more rowdy. You know how Indians are, man.
Yeah.
So they will go out even when the government and police is so they will go out even more sometimes when the police is telling them not to or the government is telling them not to.
Yeah, human law. So take it to heart. Like, if you
Mhm.
want to get strong, realize that you're probably not going to be at your best in 1 year. So even if you're lifting outside the gym, lifting from the gym is affected for freaking 6 months, it doesn't matter in the long run. Like, if
Mhm.
you want to do stuff to improve during this time, go ahead. If you don't want to do stuff to improve during this time, go ahead as well. Like, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to help you do what you really want to do, because I'm guessing you don't want to get weaker. And with the things we've discussed today, they'll help you get stronger, both now and in the future. Like,
Right.
freaking, I study like 10, 20 hours a month at least, because learning is like mining for gold, except
Right.
it's in a book. Use the time to get ahead off where you were, so that once you're able to get back in the gym, you're now able to plan to win instead of plan to lose. And bam,
Right.
within 1 year you can make more gains than you've made in 5 years. I've had clients like that because they were without a plan, just doing stuff, and boom, they got a plan. 100 kilo PR total, like say somebody went from 500 kilos to 600 kilos in 4 to 5 months without really going up in body weight because we optimized their training.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Alright, so what's the point of being in the gym if you're working for, let's say, 50 cents an hour when you can use
Mm-hmm.
this time to begin working for $50 an hour?
$15 an hour, man. That's so sweet, man.
Yeah, gotta
Yeah.
make your gains while you're in the gym.
Yeah, man. And even when you're at home,
Yeah.
you have to make gains. Yeah, man. Okay, man. So this was really, really insightful. And honestly, I'm blessed to have people like you around me. That really keeps my mind sharp, and it really, really helps, man. And hopefully this podcast is going to help a lot of Indian lifters and non-lifters alike. So thank you so much, Dan. Let's just summarize everything. One, always have a plan. Second, build relatively good, better habits. No matter what, even during chaos, there's going to be certain things where you can get better. So you better get better at those things. If you have back injury, go and visit a professional, or at least go and check out the big book by Stuart McGill, Dr. Stuart McGill, right? The back mechanics.
Definitely.
So
Would
yeah,
rather begin there than talking to a doctor because most doctors have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to helping
with
people
explaining
wanting to get
injuries.
back into lifting.
Yeah.
Not just in
And
India.
the most probably they're gonna give you some painkillers and gonna tell you, okay, stay away from lifting, and they're gonna give you stupid recommendations like, okay, start walking a lot and do not touch weights, or something like, okay, so here's the idea: you go and do light weight for very high repetitions. That's the kind of smart talk they're gonna give the lifter or anyone, which is
Yeah,
not always that productive. I'm
yeah,
not really dismissing their advice, but it is not the most productive advice you can give to someone who wants to get back to lifting.
exactly. Like everybody's different. Somebody might need a pizza with some cheese and onions on it to get better, whereas somebody else needs a hamburger.
Right. I want a hamburger with a lot of pork and cheese and fries within it.
That'd be
That's
nice,
it, man.
man. That'd be
Thank you so
nice.
much. This was really amazing.
My
Hope to
pleasure,
see you
man.
again soon here, man. It was a pleasure to have you.
Likewise.
Thank you, man. Take care.
Likewise.
And